This is Heather Hobbs with 5 Halloween secrets you will want to know. Number 1 secret: Halloween masks and costumes give people permission to do or be or become anything that they want to be. What is the purpose of a mask or the purpose of a costume? It's to hide the real identity of that person and to suppress that identity of that person so that they can become whatever it is that they choose to become, whatever it is that they dress up as. It gives them permission to act out in ways that they normally wouldn't act out in. One of the things that is really interesting, I have a couple of things I want to talk about with permission, and that is, why do you suppose some actors and actresses are willing to perform extreme roles with disregard to morals and values that they hold? Okay, actors and actresses will perform these roles because they know that when they step into somebody else's character, that they don't have to answer for the consequences of that character because it's make-believe, right? It's fictional. And so they create this whole persona within this system where they don't have to answer to those things. The same thing happens with us as individuals when we put on costumes or put masks on. It gives us, just the mere fact of just putting on the costumes, it gives us permission to become or act out in whatever way we feel fit that goes with that costume. Now, what's interesting is that as we're talking about these costumes, it's not just a one-night thing, right, anymore. These things are expanding into our society in so much that they are everywhere. And we are ending up having identity crisis in our societies today. Why is that? Because we are giving ourselves permission to not find or express our true identity for ourselves. We're suppressing our own identity. So I know some people will say, well, Pretty Little Princesses or fairies, or there's all these really good costumes that you can dress up in on Halloween, but it's the same concept. It doesn't matter what you dress up in. It doesn't matter if there's a mask or not. What happens is we suppress our own real identity. Now, like I said, this is becoming a problem where Halloween just isn't a one-night thing anymore. It's becoming something that is happening throughout the whole entire year. Now, if you look at this picture right in the middle, this is Jack Skellington. And Jack Skellington, this looks like a nice, very well decorated little Halloween party, right? Well, no, this is actually a wedding. A wedding. This is a wedding reception, and Jack Skellington is overseeing this wedding. Now, there is some cause for concern when something demonic and something of death initiates or oversees something that is meant to create bond and create relationship and to grow. Okay, because death, it destroys, doesn't it? So isn't that interesting that we have people who, and this is not the only wedding reception picture that I found or wedding decoration with demonic background or a demonic theme behind it. There are a lot of these weddings being performed. There are a lot of people who go and they, like these girls down here, sort of almost all girls down here, they dye their hair. And what happens after Halloween? Some of that hair doesn't return to its natural color. Some of the makeup doesn't come off the faces. And I'm not just talking for a few days. I'm talking about throughout the whole entire year. Some of the unicorn crowns and some of the unicorn ears stay on our children all year long. And not just children, but adults. We see adults dressing up in costumes as well. And they can dress up as a chicken or a kitty, like you see here on Halloween night. But after Halloween night, what happens? It's still continuing. And that's what the call for concern is, because if we give our kids or we give people the permission one night a year to act out in whatever way they want and to be whoever they want and suppress their identity. But now this is an ongoing concern where it's not just one day, it's throughout the whole entire year. So in Psychology Today, it says, given the fantasy themed nature of the furry fandom, individual furries are free to create representations of themselves unbounded by reality. That's huge. Unbounded by reality. We're separating ourselves from reality when we put these costumes on, when we wear these masks, and what we're suppressing and what we're really becoming, what's really becoming bound is our identity. It's not being expressed anymore. So the individual furries are free to create representations of themselves that are unbounded by reality. Is this reality? No, it's not. This is not a reality. As such, they can reconceptualize themselves with regard to age, gender, personality, or physical characteristics. Now, what's scary about this is that this person down here in this corner, it isn't a high school graduate that we're looking at. This is a college graduate who decides that their reality isn't good enough. So they create this reality that is not bound by any rules. They reconceptualize themselves. They can be whatever gender, whatever age, and they can have or carry whatever personality or physical characteristics that they want. Now, the scary part about that is that as they continue to do this, and let me see if it says, yeah, this may be due to the fact that over time, others begin to interact with them as that idealized self, validating that self, and helping them to internalize it as part of themselves. What? So we're giving them permission to be cats forever, to act like a cat forever. We're giving them permission to allow these things to become personalized as a part of themselves, as a part of who they really are. So the longer these things happen and the more they stay in these costumes, the more they begin to take on those roles or those personalities or those actions for themselves. Do you see a problem with this? Is this a problem? Is this a problem when we give them permission where they have no accountability for what they do when they are wearing a mask or when they are wearing a costume? Because nobody knows it's them. Or maybe they do know it's them, but we've given them permission to not have to take accountability for it. Okay, this has happened a long time ago, even in the Celtic world, where they would have these celebrations and they would have like the Day of the Gesture, I think is what they call them. You can look it up. I'm not going into a lot of detail in this. I want to try to keep it short, but look it up, where they would dress up as jesters, as you see here in this picture, and they would roam the streets, and it was a day of doing whatever they wanted. There was no law. There were things that were performed that day that the next morning would come and all would be forgiven. Masks come off. Nobody knew who it was that night, and they got away with anything. There was no responsibility for the actions of the person behind the mask. Okay, the same thing and the same concept happens with the idea or concept of Halloween. If we wear a mask, people don't know who we are. We can act however we want and not be held responsible for that or be accountable for it. We give people permission to not be themselves. And not only on Halloween night, like I said, it's spreading. That is a cause for concern. So number one secret, we give permission to our children and to whoever else to act out and to not be held accountable for their actions. That's a problem. Number two, representations. Okay, behind the decorations, we have all these decorations, and there are homes that just go all out, right? all of these decorations. We talk about webs. We can put webs up all over our house. But what is a web? A web is something that catches something, right? A web is something that holds something there. Like it catches them in their thing and they won't let it go. So when we put webs up all over our home, we are actually being caught up in our sin. We're being caught in that space. It's a representation of the devil. Okay. That's what represents the spider web. We could talk about the World Wide Web. What does it do? It catches people in temptation, right? So somebody can be on the web for a really long time. And what's happening is that it's holding people there. Okay. It's keeping a hold of those things that we don't want to be entrapped by our sin, but that's exactly what the web does. It entraps us in sin, and it entraps us in things that we can't get out of, or we feel like we can't get out of. There's always a way out, right? Okay, pumpkins. Let's go to pumpkins. This one is kind of sad for me because we take a pumpkin, it's beautiful. It's a creation of God. We take it, we cut the opening in the top, and we pull all of the things out that are good. Pull all the stuff out. We yank it out. And then what do? We take the pumpkin, all the insides out, and then we put a candle in it and we burn the insides and we put a face on it. But the face normally is demonic, and those demonic faces light up. So I know it was a thing in the past where we talked about, I recall this when I was little, I guess, saying that the pumpkins, we carve the faces in and we carve the scary faces in so that it scares away the evil demons. But what happens when we take all the good out of this pumpkin, all the seeds, okay, that's what's good, right? Because that's what allows it to continue growing and to continue reproducing. So we take the goodness out of the pumpkin, we burn the inside with fire, and we light up a demon on the face of the pumpkin. But how does the demon get there? We carve the face into the flesh of the pumpkin. Okay, think about the representation there. We're carving into the flesh of a pumpkin a demon face that is lit up because we took the goodness out. Just a representation and something to think about. Skeletons. Oh, skeletons. So skeletons are everywhere. Okay. It's something that never goes away. I would say it's something that never dies, which is kind of funny. But I don't mean it funny, but it is. Skeletons are something that never die. They are everywhere. They are all over our society. But when we decorate our homes with skeletons and webs and these demon faces that we carve out of pumpkin's flesh, when we do these things, we are inviting morbidity. So we're inviting those morbid thoughts, okay, to enter into our home. But not only morbid thoughts, we are actually looking at symbols of death. When we have skeletons sitting around our home, they are symbols of death. Now, why is this? So what, Heather? One day a year? Is it really that big of a deal? Okay, but we're not doing it one day a year. And yes, it is. Even one day of the year, I think it's a big deal. And you'll see why with the numbers ahead. So stay with me. Symbols of death will do crazy things to our physical body. I'll get to that in a minute, but skeletons bring that symbol of death out. Now, the other thing that is something that we shouldn't ignore is that along with all of this, as we play these games, right, of Halloween trick-or-treating, we play the game and we teeter on demonic principles on Halloween night. We're looking at like potions and curses and spells and magic, and we think it's all fun and we think it's all a game. But are we sure it's all a game? Are we sure it's all just make believe? Maybe what we do is But there is another group of people out there who don't, and who take these things very seriously. So serious, in fact, that we have spell books. Now, you can say, yeah, like Harry Potter spell books. Well, there's those too. But yes, I'm talking about real things that have real legitimacy to them. And you can go online and you can read. I have the comments. They're too small to read here, but I have the comments on here that talk about what happens or what they feel about these spell books. Yes, this is a really great book. It really helped me be able to start my witchery or witchcraft. And you look at this, begin your path to witchcraft with 130 easy spells that are perfect for your first time casting. Oh, wow. Okay. Maybe that's a rabbit hole that I'm just not ready to go down with everyone yet. But look at these spell books. You can go on Amazon and they're all over the place. I personally don't invite you to go deep with that. Just if you're curious, go read the remarks and go read what some of these people say about them. They're actually doing spells with them. This is a reality. It is not make believe. Okay. Now, what's happening with number 2 as these representations are all over our home and we decorate with these things, or we even act or play or pretend in these things, we create environmental dehumanization in our homes. The very place that is supposed to protect our families from the outside evils of the world, we allow dehumanization and morbidity within our walls every time we decorate and every time we celebrate Halloween. The elevation of morbidity is all around us during this time of year, during the Halloween season, right? But not only just the Halloween season. Let's go to number 3. So number 3, what events take place Halloween night? What events are taking place? Now, you may think, like I said, you may think this is all fun and games, but the reality is there are people who are out there who are using this night for its intended purpose, which is to demonize the planet, to call on evil spirits. They do this, okay? This is not just something that is made up, that is fake. They create spell circles. They have spell circle ceremonies on Halloween night. They have human and child sacrifices, including animal sacrifices as well, right? Animal sacrifices, we see this with teenagers, even in small towns. Ask your teens at school. Even if they don't want to be involved in it, I bet if they asked around, they would find a group that's going to be sacrificing cats that night. That's just where we're at. That's where our society is. And it happens even in the smallest of towns. So there's animal sacrifices. Here's a picture of an animal sacrifice that they saved a cat. This was in a cemetery. She saved this cat from being sacrificed by teenagers and being mutilated on this spell circle. They also have the human and child sacrifices. I am not going to get into a lot of depth with that. I want to say that I don't care if you don't believe that these things are happening, but I do, because they are, and that's the truth. So if you have a hard time stomaching that they are performing human and child sacrifices today in today's world, I'm just going to ask you to open your eyes one little peek at a time, even if it's just a quick blink. Get online and figure it out, because this stuff is happening today. The evocation and conjuration or calling on or summoning of evil spirits. This happens. People all over the web. I mean, you could get on YouTube and people will tell stories about experiences they had with spell circle ceremonies or with calling and summoning evil spirits and what happened to them. We have people on there willing to talk about how they were witches and how they decided not to be a witch anymore, and that how Christ saved them. There are people who are saying that they were a part of these child sacrifices, or they saw these things happen and they left cults and they left these places. It's all over. So do your research. I'm not going into the detail of it. I don't enjoy that area of these things. But the whole intent is to let you know there are events happening on Halloween night, but not only Halloween night, it is expanded into a worldwide thing. Okay, these things are happening throughout the year. It's not just on Halloween night, and it's worldwide. The Burning Man is one example of this. If you look up on Wikipedia, there's a Wicker Man. The Wicker Man was Celtic paganism, which is where the Halloween came from. It's where the gesture parties came from and celebrations came from, where people just didn't have to have responsibility for what happened. So they would take these people or animals. It was animal or people sacrifices, and they would fill these wicker mans, which had little prisons and little jails within them, and they would light them up Halloween night and they would burn them to the ground. They would burn the people alive and screaming. They would burn the animals alive. Okay, this is something that is part of our history, not American history, but part of the world history. And here we're seeing it in the Arizona desert. Thankfully, right now, we don't have animal or people sacrifices within them. But why would they pull up the Wicker Man and reinvent it to put it in the Arizona desert and create a celebration around it? Okay, this is cause for concern, and it's cause for us to be aware. Look at the middle picture. This just makes my stomach curl. Okay, in the picture, these are artists, guys, that gather here to do the Burning Man. Look it up. This year in the Arizona desert, it was like a month ago where this happened, and it rained it out. They got rained out, but look it up because they do this every year in the Arizona desert. This one right here, I'm not sure if this one is in the Arizona desert because these take place all over the world, not just in America, not just in wherever. I think Gaul, like Rome, wherever. But this picture right here just makes me sad because the image is very clear on the other side where it's a man and a woman embracing each other and they're burning them. They're burning them down. Okay, what's happening to humanity and what events really are taking place on Halloween night that is opening up portals or opening up the ability to speak to evil spirits or even to be controlled by evil spirits? There are plenty of people who will tell you that those evil spirits will take over their bodies. Okay, lots of crazy stuff happening. Number 4, secret. This is incredible, you guys. Physical impact, the physical impact of what this means to ourselves, to our children, and to the people we love, right? What is the frontal lobe of the brain? The frontal lobe of the brain is just that. It's the frontal part of the brain. And why is it important? It's important because that's where all of the thinking takes place. That's where all the choices, where the discernment, where the thinking happens, whether it's creative thinking or logical thinking. This is the hub of thought right there in the frontal lobe. And what happens when that frontal lobe is in place is that we can think ahead. We can see ahead. So this is someone who has a healthy frontal lobe is able to look out maybe 5 years from now and say, these are my goals. And in 5 years, I'm going to do this, or 10 years, or 15 years, or even 3 years, 2 years, 1 year. Okay. They're able to project ahead, and they're able to understand or see the consequences of their choices ahead of time before those things happen. But what happens when that frontal lobe shuts down? And what I mean by that is that the blood flow stops going to the frontal lobe, or not just stops, but it slows down dramatically. Okay. When the frontal lobe shuts down, that means there's a lot less blood flow going to the frontal part of the brain, which means that part of the brain isn't working as much as it could. And it's not working in our benefit. So what is it that shuts down the frontal lobe? The frontal lobe function. one of the major things that Dr. Neil L. Nedley, he talks about this, and he's done a lot of research on the frontal lobe function. He says that if we are thinking morbid thoughts, or if we have morbidity around us, or symbols of death, it will shut down the frontal lobe function. Now, why does this have to do with Halloween? I don't know. You guys can make that connection, right? So if we are surrounding ourselves with death, symbols of death, or thoughts or visions or scenes of morbidity, our frontal lobe is being shut down. And not only is this frontal lobe, like, I really want to put this plug in here because it talks about, or Dr. Nelly talks about, how the frontal lobe is the spiritual portion of the brain. So can you see how that happens? Where if we are in the middle of death and morbidity, that our frontal lobe shuts down, that our spiritual seed, which is the frontal lobe, is shut off. That makes sense, doesn't it? You can't be in two places. You can't be good and you can't be evil at the same time. I don't care if you're dressed up as a princess and you go out and you're among the evil and you see the morbid and you see the symbols of death, your frontal lobe is going to shut down because you're putting yourself out there in that environment. Okay, do you understand the validity or the value of this even? Now, there's a lot of validity in it as well. So why do you suppose there's an increase in depression, anxiety, morbid thinking, fear intensity, which also is anxiety, right? Disintegrating values and becoming past feeling? It's because if we can surround ourselves with symbols of death and we can see things that are morbid, then we shut down our frontal lobe, which halts or seriously deforms our ability to discern between what's right, between what's good and what's not good. It shuts down our thinking, our critical thinking, our ability to see ahead, our ability to know what we're doing tomorrow. If you have had anyone, if you know somebody who has major depression or who even has anxiety, you know this is true because the majority of the time they'll tell you, I don't know what to do. I don't know what's going to happen tomorrow. I don't know. I don't know. They have no sense of foresight. They can't see ahead. That's because their frontal lobe is shut down. So what happens when we have morbid thinking? What happens when fear intensifies and we have anxiety? And what happens when people become past feeling? Okay, they involve or they create this world or this space for themselves. This consumes our mental health. What is perceived through the senses is recorded long term, and it affects our overall health. If we see morbidity, if we experience that in our senses, what is Halloween night? All of our senses, right? We see, we smell, we taste, we hear, we feel. All five senses, I think I got them all. All of them are heightened on Halloween night. When we heighten the senses, the memories and the emotions and the feelings go long term, and it will affect overall mental health and probably just overall health because mental health affects overall health. Okay, I hope that we're seeing and understanding the seriousness and what physical impact this has on our bodies, on ourselves, and on our family. Number 5 secret: good is evil, and evil is good. So I'm inviting you to think, how many movies in the last decade or more, because some of these movies are a lot longer, farther along than that, right? How many show sacrifice of women or children? Okay, let's take a look at this really quick. So this is an older movie. Maybe some of you recognize it. This is Ernest Scared Stupid. And Ernest Scared Stupid, this is fascinating because you guys, there are clues in movies. If you think for 1 minute that Hollywood or Disney or any of those places decide to just do a movie purely for entertainment purposes, you're dead wrong. Okay, everything has a reason and everything has a representation of something else, whether it's good or whether it's bad. There's representation in all things. So if we look at Ernest Scared Stupid, you see these little, that's energy. Boy, that's a rabbit hole. Look up the energy. Do you see all the energy? They're like the electric energy that all the bad guys have. Okay. That's important. And there's symbolism in that. I'm not going to get into that one right now, but there are people who will talk about that online though. Okay. So if you look at this picture of Ernest Scared Stupid, the troll takes the kids, right? He turns them into like wood or whatever. And then if you haven't seen the movie, he places them all, he has to have so many children, and then it creates energy for his troll children to grow. Okay. So there's so much symbolism in that. Here we go back to sacrificing women and children or humans, right? Men, women, children, sacrifices. There is more to it than that, and it goes so much more deep than just a sacrifice to a god. What happens is, and I'm not going to go into a lot of detail, but basically the idea is that if a child is sacrificed in trauma, right? All of these are traumatic. If it's sacrificed in trauma, then it gives age, like it helps with aging, or it helps with energy or becoming renewed. Okay, so if you know any of these movies, you understand that all of these things, like The Witches, Stardust, that show kind of freaked me out, and this one too, because what's happening is they're all old, they get older, right? But then if they eat the heart, so she eats the heart of this woman who is pure, then she can be young again. Okay, played by Michelle Pfeiffer. It's really creepy. And here too, same concept, right? They're getting older or they're not going to last, and so they have to eat a child. Those are child sacrifices. Okay, and we have other sacrifices happening. Knights of the Zodiac, that was freaky. Willow, and then we have Scarlet, the Scarlet Witch, so called. Like this is a new movie, and we watch this for entertainment. And what's happening really is that we are bringing more morbidity, more morbid thoughts, more symbols of death into our home and becoming trapped by them. So same thing here with Thanos, where he sacrifices his daughter, and Hunger Games, they're sacrificing children. So how many movies work on even sympathizing, even after sacrifices, even after we know they're evil? How many movies work on sympathizing with the bad guy, just trying to do good? Okay, look at this. Look at her face. Oh, so much compassion as she kills people. What? So much. And then Thanos, I don't know if you guys saw this, but in the movie, I can't even remember the movie, where he clicks his fingers and everyone disappears, and he's sitting on the rocking chair in the porch, and he's like finally breathing because it finally is good for him, right? And it was so hard for him because he had to sacrifice his daughter in order to get there. But it was all worth it because now he has a utopian society. What the? You're kidding me, right? So they sympathize with these bad guys just trying to do good. Okay, now let's look at some of these others. These are some of the bigger ones. There's probably thousands of these movies. You guys can probably go through your list of movies and pick out the majority of them that do the same thing. Okay, the master, what is it? Megamind. Yeah, I lost my cursor. There it is. Megamind, right? A bad guy just trying to be good. Despicable Me, bad guy just trying to do good. This one was kind of concerning. My daughter shared this with me. I asked her, she really liked Tangled, and I asked her why she didn't like the sitcom or they have like Disney shorts of it now. And she said, "Well, Mom, the witch that stole her out of the castle is now her friend. And they're singing together and they're doing things together." Like, oh, evil is good. Okay, let's not watch that. The bad guys. Like this is a literary group of things, and there's all sorts of literary stuff, literature as well. But the bad guys, they're bad, but they can be good. Good guys can be bad, or bad can be good. And then another one that was kind of disheartening was, I think it's called Descendants, that Disney put out. And I think there's still many shows. I think it's a sitcom. I don't know for sure, but Descendants is the descendants of all of the villains. And these descendants are trying to just make a name for themselves. And it's like this high school musical. Oh, holy cow, like really cool stuff and really hip hop and really pulls teenagers in, right? But they're singing, it's good to be bad. It's good to be bad. And then we look at their heroes, because they're watching these kids and they have the purple hair. They have right here, blue hair. When we go outside of the norm, when we step outside of the norm, we begin to lose our identity. Just FYI. So if you're starting to see a lot of weird fingernail colors, or even a lot of hair, like changing colors of hair, dramatic. I'm not talking small things, okay? Dramatically. These things are cause of concern, because this is a sign and a cry saying, I can't find myself. I'm not sure who I am anymore. And this is what society is doing, because if we take away the identity, then it doesn't really matter. We don't have morals, we don't have standards, and we can't be held accountable for anything, right? Because we just put on a mask and it's all okay. This one was My Little Ponies. It was a little disturbing. And they're taking the My Little Ponies and they're putting them into humanistic characters. They're humanizing them. And she's like this demon with magic coming out of her horn. There's a lot of morbidity in our videos, and a lot of really gross things that we are being exposed to in our entertainment and through our entertainment. Just like with all Halloween stuff, good is becoming evil and evil is becoming good. So I'm going to invite you to look through those things and really ponder on what 5 things I've shared with you and 5 secrets I've shared with you about Halloween, because this is expanding beyond Halloween. It's becoming a big part of society and a big concern for those who are struggling with mental health issues and beyond. So how many symbols of death, just by invitation, and just thinking about it right now, how many symbols of death can you see just by walking through a store on any given day of the year? Try it. If you can't think about it, or if you don't remember, try it. Walk through a store any day of the year, not just Halloween, any day of the year, and see how many symbols of death you can spot or you can see. Because I guarantee you that it's going to be a number far greater than you could imagine. It's on everything. We are subduing society that way. We are shutting down our own frontal lobes by purchasing the items, by bringing them into our homes, and by surrounding ourselves with these things, symbols of death and visions of morbidity, such as in these movies that I've been sharing with you. Take a walk through your home. This is an invitation today. Take a walk through your home. Any symbols of death that you are aware of? Are there any symbols of death that you know about? Now, as you walk through your home a second time, find the symbols of death that you are not aware of. This is going to take a little bit of detective work because I guarantee there are far more symbols of death in your home than you realize. We have it on underwear. We have it on clothing. We have it on cups. We have it everywhere. It's everywhere. So become a detective and see if you can find all the symbols of death, because those symbols of death, even though we may not cognitively be aware of them, when we find them because we're looking for them and we're making an effort to become aware of them, we can see how much of an impact it has on our home environment. I would invite you to get rid of them. That's my invitation to you. Walk through your home, find the symbols of death, get them out of your home, get them out of your environment, because they are causing physical damage, mental damage. They're causing a mental illness in your home. Like I said, even if we feel we are unaware of them. Movies, same thing. If whatever we invite into our environment is going to affect us mentally. So last stretch here, and last thing I would like to share with you is, if you are a believer in Jesus Christ, you better believe the devil is real too, because he's out there. And even if you don't believe all the things I shared with you of all these secrets of Halloween, I can guarantee you, and I promise you, they're true. And so I invite you to take the steps that you need to forward so that you can get rid of those things out of your home, so that you can choose to not participate in those things and choose not to put yourself in those positions where your mind, your thoughts, and your ability to stay spiritually sound and grounded in this crazy dark world are going to be compromised. That is my invitation to you. I wish you well and Godspeed.